107 days, way too many for anybody, but including her.
Right.
But the more they got to know her, the less they liked her. I've said this many times on this show. Other countries don't do this. They don't have years to run. They call an election, and they have an election in a month.
Yeah, and nor the influence of money.
I mean, that's just one of many examples.
She could have had 701 days and would have still lost that race.
Kamala Harris thought her new book, 107 Days, would be a comeback moment, a chance to rewrite the narrative and explain why her 2024 campaign collapsed. But instead, it's turning into a spotlight on everything voters already disliked about her. Bill Maher didn't hold back. He flat out said the problem wasn't time. It wasn't unfair circumstances. It was Kamala herself.
You don't need 100 days. You need 107 days. You tell people your plan. This is what I am for. This is my thing. You're selling something. You're selling a vacuum cleaner. If I'm selling a vacuum cleaner, I'll tell you why I think it's best. Am I going to tell you every goddamn day for 2 years? Did I tell you about the attachment that gets under the... Yeah, you did. You told me 1,000 times.
According to Maher, Americans finally got a good look at who she really was, and they didn't like it. And when you peel back the layers of this book, it's not just about Harris's mistakes. It exposes something far bigger. The identity crisis tearing the Democratic Party apart.
The Democratic Party stands for today is opposition to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And I just read Kamala Harris's new book, 107
No,
Days.
you didn't.
I did?
No, you didn't.
I'd like to...
I'll say a lot of lies on this show, but I won't take that. I will not accept
I thought
that.
you might ask me about it. That's what I had to read it. But the point is...
Kamala's defense is simple. She didn't have enough time. She insists that 107 days between her announcement and the general election doomed her chances. But Maher shredded that excuse in seconds. Other countries call elections and hold them in under a month. In Britain or Canada, campaigns are lightning fast compared to America's endless, money-soaked marathons. The real issue wasn't the calendar. It was that the more voters saw of Kamala, the less they connected with her. Authenticity, trust, likability. She didn't have them. And as Maher put it, when you're selling a product, people either buy into it or they don't. No amount of extra days on the clock changes that. But this wasn't just a jab at Harris. It was a warning sign for her entire party. Because what Maher said next pulled the curtain back on something much bigger.
It's like, as you probably know, it's like a diary of what happened. But I was looking for, okay, and what's the plan for the future? There wasn't any, and she's just indicative of the party at large. And by the way, that's one of the reasons she lost.
Well, she's rewriting history in the book, too. She's now against men and women's sports. Like, come on. Like, they tried to dismantle Title IX against women when she was vice president.
Right. I mean, that's just one of many examples.
She could have had 701 days and would have still lost that race.
Maher pointed to fresh polling data that should terrify Democrats. On the surface, Donald Trump's numbers are slipping. His support is down among Latinos, down among black voters, even down a shocking 15 points with white voters. On paper, that looks like the perfect storm for Democrats to surge. But here's the twist. When voters are asked about the issues that actually drive elections, crime, immigration, inflation, foreign wars, Trump and Republicans are still leading by a wide margin. In other words, Democrats have been handed a golden opportunity on a silver platter. The other team is stumbling, but they still can't score. Why? Because instead of focusing on solutions to real problems, they're doubling down on culture wars and woke talking points that don't resonate outside their bubble. And that leads to Maher's most brutal observation yet. Democrats are losing even on their signature value. Think about it. The word Democratic is in their name. You'd expect the party to crush Republicans on questions of democracy, fairness, and institutions. But recent surveys show the opposite. On respect for democracy, Democrats are barely ahead, just 2 points. In some polls, Republicans are even overtaking them. That's not just a warning light, that's a 5-alarm fire. If Democrats can't even own democracy as their brand, what do they stand for? This collapse of identity is more than just polling noise. It signals that voters no longer trust Democrats to live up to the very principle they've claimed as their foundation. And at the center of this disconnect is Kamala Harris, whose own book reads like a case study in excuses and missed opportunities. Which brings us back to the book itself, and why Maher says it's proof that Harris and the party she represents have no roadmap for the future. Maher described Kamala's book as little more than a diary of complaints. Page after page, she explains why things didn't work out. What's missing? a plan. There's no blueprint for the future, no bold agenda for how she'd fix America's problems, no vision for how she'd lead differently from Joe Biden. This was her moment to show independence, to prove she wasn't just Biden's understudy, but a leader with her own voice. Instead, the book is a rehash of talking points voters had already tuned out. Maher's critique is devastating because it cuts through the spin. She had her moment, and she wasted it. But it gets worse, because beyond the lack of vision, the book is riddled with contradictions and revisionist history. Kamala Harris wants to distance herself from the very woke politics that once defined her career. She now claims she opposes men competing in women's sports, despite supporting it while in power. Even more damaging is the Buttigieg controversy. In 107 Days, she explicitly writes that choosing Pete Buttigieg as a running mate would have been too risky because he's gay. Yet, when pressed on it in an interview, she denied even saying that. That contradiction is political quicksand. If you can't stand by your own words, printed in black and white, how can voters trust you to stand firm on actual policy? Maher's point lands hard. This isn't just sloppy politics, it's a credibility crisis. And Harris isn't alone. Her empty endorsements prove the whole party is suffering from the same disease. Another example, her support for New York candidate Zoran Mamdani. When asked about him, Harris couldn't explain why she backed him beyond one shallow reason. He's a Democrat. No mention of policies, no vision, just party loyalty. That's exactly the kind of hollow politics voters are sick of. Americans want leaders who stand for something, not politicians who blindly rubber stamp whoever carries the right label. Harris's answer didn't just hurt her, it symbolized the broader weakness of the Democratic Party. A party that prioritizes loyalty over leadership is doomed to keep losing credibility. And then came the final twist. Harris turning on Biden, but only after it was safe to do so. When Kamala was vice president, she had one consistent message: full loyalty to Joe Biden. She publicly said she wouldn't change a thing he'd done. She never criticized his handling of the border, inflation, or foreign policy blunders. But now, freed from the vice presidency, Harris is suddenly pointing out every mistake of the Biden era. The irony is painful. She had the platform, the influence, and the responsibility to speak up when it mattered. And she stayed silent. Now, when the damage is already done, she wants credit for telling the truth. To voters, it looks opportunistic, it looks weak, and Maher is blunt about it. Too little, too late. Kamala Harris's book was supposed to explain why she lost. Instead, it revealed why her political future is hanging by a thread. Excuses instead of accountability. Contradictions instead of clarity. Loyalty instead of leadership. Bill Maher's critique hits at a deeper truth. Democrats have no message beyond being anti-Trump, and voters are noticing. If Kamala Harris and her party want to come back, it won't come through revisionist history or shallow branding. It will take brutal honesty, bold solutions, and the courage to stand for something real. Because at the end of the day, Americans aren't just looking for someone who's against Trump, they're looking for someone who's actually for something. Until that happens, books like 107 Days will be remembered not as political blueprints, but as reminders of why the Democrats keep losing ground.